Let me ask you a question. How did you become the person that you think you are? Take me, for example. The name I was given as a child is David. I was told I was a boy, and I was taught how boys should and should not behave. And I was taught a great many other things that literally shaped my self-concept. This is what we're talking about when we say the process of domestication. This process of growing up and being told what you are and how to act and how to behave, what to think, what not to think, how to feel, what's okay to feel, what's not acceptable to feel, all that stuff, that is called domestication. And you went through it just like I did, just like everybody did. And it produced a sense of self. When you went through your domestication, it produced in you a sense of identity. You know, the person that you now refer to as yourself, as me, as I. You were literally programmed like a computer is programmed. And if you listen to yourself, as I will show you how to do, you know, in the 3 masteries, when we get into those tools, even when you listen to yourself masterfully, you will literally begin to see the program. For it is right there, buried in the thoughts that run through your head and the emotional patterns that you have practiced for as long as you can remember. You know, you call them my thoughts, my emotions, me. That's the program. Now, let me ask you this. Are you sure they are your thoughts? You know, are you sure they are your thoughts and not just, you know, thoughts that belong to the world? Impersonal energies that you happen to be tuned to? Are you sure they are yours, or you're just a receiver of impersonal energies that you're specifically tuned to? These are very important questions, and as you'll see as we go along, the better you can answer these questions, the better you'll be able to choose what you are. Okay? Now, you have been conditioned, socialized, and this has happened through a system of reward and punishment, of acceptance and rejection. You know, when you're a little kid and you are told if you're a good boy or a good girl, you'll get this, or you'll get that punishment, or you'll get this reward, you see, or we'll accept you or we'll reject you, things like that. Pain and pleasure. All these things have been used from a very tender age to literally program you into a particular kind of identity. You see? So what I'm suggesting to you is that the voice in your head, you know, the self-talk, you know, we all have thoughts running through our heads, and you know, when we say, oh, I'm thinking this, that's what I'm talking about, the self-talk. That's what I'm calling the voice in your head. So anyways, the voice in your head, the bad feelings, you know, that the feelings that you tend to avoid, and the particular way that you choose to interpret your life in general, or life in general, you know, and what you run away from and what you run towards, all these are part of the program. And more often than not, the program is broken. Yes, your program, and I don't know you, so forgive me if I'm crossing lines here or I'm making assumptions about things I don't know, but I'm willing to bet that your program is broken. And it is not broken because your parents were bad or evil, or they were trying to break you or something like that. You know, I'm not trying to blame them. I'm simply saying that it is broken. Your program is broken because all programs are broken. You know, that's why it's called the false self, or the unconscious ego. And it's broken because it doesn't reflect what you really are. Now, allow me to explain that further. Now, remember, as we saw in earlier lessons, that you are a non-physical being having a physical experience. The non-physical aspect of you is literally infinite, eternal, all-powerful. That is what we call your true self. However, through the process of domestication, you have come to accept a diminished, a smaller, a lesser idea of what you are. And that is what we are calling your false self. Okay? Because it's not truly what you are. It's not the full magnificence of the non-physical you. And in so many ways, it contains corrupted ideas, small ideas, limiting ideas. And we'll see more and more and more of that as we go through this course. So this is just kind of, we're still in the introduction stages, okay? Now, awakening is the process of becoming like a child again, while retaining your wisdom, retaining the life lessons that you've learned. Because growing up, it's not all bad. We learn a lot. That's why we come to this planet. We remember what we really are. We learn. We expand. We grow. We evolve. So many good things happen, right? But then there's also the crap that we that we accumulate. So awakening is literally becoming like that child again. Getting back that your original state before it was corrupted by domestication, while at the same time keeping the wisdom and the life's lessons and growth that you've had. Okay, that's as simple as that. Now, these quotes, let's read a few quotes that are going to illustrate what I'm attempting to communicate with you here. So, first quote, and this one is by Paul Selig from the Book of Freedom. I quote, "If you imagine an infant who knows its truth, suddenly thrust into a dense field that is fraught with fear and inherits the information that was created in that fear, then you have separation. The divine that is the child is still as present as it ever was, but the confirmation of its reality has been confirmed by the collective, and the collective has decided what will be so." Let me pause reading right here and just real quick explain what he's just said there. He's saying that if you can, when you're born into this environment, and this environment is full of fear. And by fear, I don't mean like scary clowns and horror stories. I mean, even just like the idea that I can't stand up and speak in public. That's a fear. It could be something as small as that, or even smaller. But anyways, the child is born in an environment that is fraught in fear, and that is surrounded by information that was already here. Okay? Let's say, for example, this is a tree, this is a computer, this is a man. Males should behave this way, females should behave this way. That information was already here. So this child is immersed in that environment. Okay? And so what it's saying is that the divinity in that child wasn't erased. It's still there. But it is now sort of covered by the collective. By the collective, it means the society that the child was born into, the upbringing, the environment that the child was born into. Okay, let me continue reading. Now, the small self, in most ways, is an agreement in a collective, only because its agreements were made in a time where she was seeking to learn who she was. And what she learned confirmed the need for fear and for anger and for thoughts that she would not get what she wants because she is not worthy of the divine in full expression. So let me pause again and explain real quick. My interpretation of this is that this child is born, and because they're born they're very small in terms of physically small, a little child, they have needs and all this, and as they get those needs fulfilled from a conditioned environment, and this environment is conditioning them that, hey, if you want your needs fulfilled, you have to be like this, you have to act like this, this is what's a good boy, this is what's a good girl, this is all these things, right? So this child learns the need for fear, the need for such kind of things, the needs for anger, because it interprets the anger or the whatever it is. However, every family grows up different, every society grows up different, but whatever it is, that this child understands that, look, if I'm going to survive, I'm going to need to behave like this lot are telling me to, or whatever. You see? So that's what I mean. Okay, I'll continue reading. Now, the idea that you will be fully expressed as the divine self is a point of great confusion for all of you. You think it means that you will be taking bows. You will be so luminous that nobody can gaze upon you. Your bills are all paid for. The beautiful men and women you desire are all present all day long because you are so wondrous. Or you assume that it means you become a pious and separate or you assume that it means you become pious and separate from the world and deny yourself pleasure because you perceive the divine to be outside of form, and the idea of pleasure must be of lower nature. Neither is so. In other words, the quote is saying that when you awaken, you're not just, you're not going to be like a holy Joe. You're not going to be like, walking on water and glowing like the sun. You're still going to be in this world. You're simply not going to be of this world. You're not going to be run by the program. And there's a great amount of joy and relief and power in that. So just because you're not going to be walking on water doesn't mean that, this ain't worthwhile. This is extremely worthwhile. Anyways, I'll continue reading. So it says, to be fully realized as the true self, the divine as you are, requires one thing: to surrender to what you have always been at the cost of the known. In other words, you have to die. Your small self, what you think you know that you are, will die. You surrender it, and then you're born again. It sounds a little bit like Christianity, right? But it's not. And I dare say, I think that's what the original person known as Yeshua ben Yosef, or now known as Jesus Christ, I come to believe that this is what was the original meaning before it was taken over and sort of given new interpretations. But anyways, I continue reading. True freedom is a requirement of the divine self, who has released the need to conform to institutional policy, to rhetoric, to decisions made for him or her by others that would limit the soul's true expression. It is the release from all the alignment that you have confirmed by nature of being born in a field corrupt with fear that you have enjoyed and agreed to. End of quote. Now, here's another quote. This one is from Jesus, who is quoted as having said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." Now, remember, in another place, and this is not a direct quote, I'm paraphrasing, Jesus also said that the kingdom is within you, inside of you, inside of every person. It's not something that you die and go to. It's within you. The kingdom is within. You've heard that before, right? Now I read another quote. This time is from Osho, and Osho says, "It is as if somebody has a palace and has completely forgotten about the palace and has started living on the porch. And this person thinks that the porch is all there is to it." In other words, the person has forgotten that they've got a palace, and because they just living on the porch, they think that that's all they've got, just the porch. So that's a beautiful metaphor. It suggests that, look, the false self, the little self, the unconscious ego, that's why it's called the false self. It's small. It's like a tiny fraction of what you really are. Now we read from Don Miguel Ruiz in his book, The Four Agreements, and he says, "The mind is so wounded and full of poison from the process of domestication that everyone describes the wounded mind as normal. But I can tell you it is not normal. We have a dysfunctional dream of the planet." So now you can begin to see how the human condition is very much shaped by domestication. Okay? Now, don't take this for granted. Okay? Don't take it for granted that what I'm trying to say is that when people first hear, "Oh, you've been domesticated," they go, "Oh yeah, I knew that," and they take it for granted. I'm telling you right now, if you do that, if you just take it lightly and take it for granted, you're going to miss the main point. It's very important that you understand how deep domestication goes. Okay? In fact, the reason why we have problems and suffering and all that is precisely because we take our domestication for granted. We run around saying, "I'm me, this is my country, I'm going to fight for my country because I've been told to." And, wars, quarrels with your neighbors and kids, and quarrels between nations, and, struggling and all that has been happening because we don't question our domestication. Okay? That's why the ancient masters said we're asleep. We're awake, we are alive, but we are asleep, In other words, we believe we are who we have been told we are. And we believe that the world is what we have been told it is. We defend our self-concept instead of questioning it. You generally take this self-image for granted, like the air that you breathe. It operates unconsciously under your skin. You may not even realize it, but you're literally living in a program of the mind, a prison of the mind built out of the environment of beliefs that you happen to have been born into, through this process of domestication. So your domestication has created in you a so-called comfort zone, and it is a prison. And the reason why it is a prison is because you are not your comfort zone. You see, if you are really your comfort zone, then we wouldn't call it a prison. But because you are not your comfort zone, then it is a prison. Okay? Yet you tend to stay inside it. Sometimes even when it would actually be better for you, and it would be better for you to get out of your comfort zone, to leave the comfort zone, you still stay inside it. In other words, you do what you don't want to do, and then you fail to do what you do want to do. That's a comfort zone, and we'll talk about more about that later, even more, starting with the next lessons, such as the lesson coming up on releasing your brakes and onwards, when you get into the 3 masteries. So we'll get into that. For now, I would just like us to appreciate the idea of domestication first and foremost, and to understand it deeply without necessarily trying to solve anything for now, simply understanding what it is first. So let us now further examine socialization. For in knowing how it works, we can better witness the unconscious ego as it attempts to manipulate our divine sovereignty. Now, a tribe can be considered as a group of people who share a similar frequency of conditioning. And they also share the fear of disobeying this conditioning. So a tribe could be, you and your buddies. It could be you and your family. It could be you and your neighborhood, you and your country, you and your... So, we're not talking about tribes in the Amazon or the African jungles. A tribe is any group of people. Could even be, classroom mates, students, A tribe is just any group of people who share a similar frequency of conditioning and the fear of disobeying that conditioning, okay? So through social interaction with other people who share the same lower frequency of fear and conditioning, this system generates the pressure of society. We sometimes call this peer pressure. And by the way, it applies to everyone, not just to teenagers, okay? Everyone. You, I, we all under some kind of peer pressure, entire nation, that's a peer pressure. A neighborhood, that's a peer pressure. A company, a school, a family, that's all peer pressure. So everyone at all ages is under some kind of peer pressure, and it is the pressure to comply to society. Now, this level of socialization creates the corrupted, habitual mental preoccupations that we see in our society, and that we feel a pressure to comply with in our heads, through the voice in our heads. In others, it could be anything. It could be like, shopping. Yeah, that's a pressure. Oh, I gotta look like my neighbor, so I gotta go shopping again for shit I don't need. Or it could be pressure to patriotism, join the war. You don't even understand who you're fighting or what happened. It could be pressure to whatever, work 90 hours a week or work 60 hours a week. Why? Because my daddy told me to. Or it could be there's so many pressures, like drinking buddies or even sports. It's so you understand what I'm trying to say. It's a habitual mental preoccupation that we feel pressure to comply to, and it runs in our heads through the voice in our heads. So whatever the mantras or the sayings of your tribe, they go in your head and they're part of your thought system, and then you go and say, oh, this is my thoughts, this is just me. It's not you. Those thoughts don't belong to you. They don't make you, either. They don't even define you. But when you identify with them, then you think it's you. Do you understand how deep this thing goes? So socialization is a formatted pressure structure that survives by living through you and all other people that you interact with in your particular society or tribe, creating interconnective compliance to interconnective preoccupational activity that is deemed normal, yet it is usually meaningless. In other words, your tribe calls it normal. Your peoples call it normal, but it's usually fucking meaningless. Okay? when you look at it from the outside. It's just like when you look at another tribe, you're like, those guys are crazy. But in them, to them, you're crazy. You see what I mean? So collective compliance to an interconnected, socially reinforced, narrow and closed system of rewards and punishment is pretty much domestication defined in a nutshell. Collective compliance to an interconnected, socially reinforced, narrow and closed system of rewards and punishment. That's how you get domesticated. In short, you feel pressured to do what your society is doing, even if it's rubbish. Okay? And by society, it could mean family, it could mean neighborhood, could mean your workmates, your schoolmates, your country, whatever. You see? So, or to put it in another way, we feel pressure to give away our divine sovereignty. This is very important. Listen to this again. We feel pressured from a little tender age of like less than 1 year old to give away our divine sovereignty. In other words, we are already sovereign beings, but we have to give it away. Once we give it away, away our authority in exchange for the security of being accepted or being fed or being looked after if you're a little kid or whatever, or not being beaten up, you know, when we sell that out, that's because of that pressure structure. Eventually we find out that we've sold out for the wrong thing, that the security we sold out for is not true security at all. That maybe even if we were kids and, you know, a little child and we couldn't fend for ourselves, yeah, sure, maybe we had to do what we had to do to survive. But as we grow up, we start to realize this stuff is affecting us, and really we can still feed ourselves. So why are we complying? You know, it's like unnecessary, it's like voluntary compliance to unnecessary tyranny. So this structure, this domestication structure, it might have been useful at some point as a little child to survive a particular day, but because we walk around with it like we walk around with our past, now we're walking around with a structure that's actually not useful, and all it does is drains our energy, because we have to keep it alive, and we keep it alive by giving it our energy. Imagine how much energy you'd have if you're free of all that rubbish. So that structure drains our energy, literally, okay? And it's driven by fear. That's how you got into it in the first place. Now that energy that is being drained is being consumed by the shadow aspect of duality, by fear. We call it the predator or the parasite. You see? And you can feel it literally, because every time you're in fear, you feel weak and drained, don't you? I do. I know a lot of people. I've asked this, just about everybody I ask says when they're fear, they feel drained, they feel paralyzed. So this energy is being consumed, okay? Now, you can see the strategy being played out in our society, whereby we all seem addicted to fear. And by the way, we also fed fear. You know, we consume fear in the media, in entertainment, in the video games we play, and so on. Now, there is good news. The good news is that at the end of the day, when all is said and done, regardless of how complex this system is, the cool news is that the system relies on our thoughts for its existence. In other words, without your thought, without you feeding it your energy, without you identifying to those thoughts, the system dies. You see, it may look big and complex, but it's that simple. So the internal dialogue, you know, the voice in your head that is built upon years of social conditioning, that's what provides this groundwork of thought on which this system needs to exist. In other words, I'm telling you, the voice in your head, the self-talk, and then my self-talk, yours, and everybody in society, that is the machine that is running this whole thing. Do you understand? Now, you don't have to stop everybody's self-talk. You don't even have to stop yours. You just need to learn how to disengage from yours. You can actually let the thoughts keep going, but I can show you how to detach from them. So you don't have to stop. It's very hard to make your thoughts stop. You shouldn't even attempt it. It's a waste of time. Don't try to make yourself stop thinking. But I can show you how to make it such that the thoughts no longer have the power they had. They no longer hook you. They sort of just fly by, like the same way, like, you know, clouds fly by across the sky, and you don't get hooked on clouds, do you? At least I hope you don't get hooked on clouds. That would be crazy. I wouldn't be able to help you there. But anyways, when you look up in the sky and clouds pass by, they just pass by. They're just phenomena. You're not hooked on them. Your thoughts can become like that. Okay? So, the internal dialogue, that voice in your head built upon years of social conditioning is what provides this groundwork of thought on which the system needs to exist. So it's like a constant nagging that has replaced the silent witness. In other words, your divine presence, your silence. Have you ever heard of that saying, be still and you shall know that I am God? Or there's so many quotes, I can't even remember them all right now, but there's so many quotes and sayings about the power of silence or stillness. The thing is, the voice in your head is robbing you of that stillness. That stillness is not just emptiness, it is a witness. It's a silent witness. It's full of wisdom, it's full of presence. It is actually what gives you life. When you're aware that you're listening to my voice, when you're aware that you're watching this video or looking at something, that aliveness, that is that silent witness. And you could hear it, but the voice in your head, it's so noisy that it clouds or crowds out the silent witness. Do you see now when you awaken what you're awakening to? You're awakening to a presence that is always been there. It's not like you're going out to get something. You're not going out there to get divinity. It's already in you. It's the thing that is animating you. But it's unconditional. It doesn't shout like the voice in your head. It doesn't go, hey, listen to me. Don't listen to that voice. No. It doesn't. It's just do what you like. It's up to you, man. You want to listen to that voice, go for it. You want to do this, you want to live, you want to die, up to you. We're eternal. I don't care. It's unconditional. You understand? Anyways, back to the conditioning thing. The conditioning system needs two things to stay alive. Once you've got it in your head, once you become addicted and hooked to it, you keep it alive through your fearful thoughts. That's number one. We've already said so. And their repetition. So this is very important. It is not just that thoughts are there, but they're repeating. There's a statistic, I think you might have heard of it, that people have 50,000 thoughts a day and 90% of them are repetitive. That's what I'm talking about. It's the same old shit over and over and over and over again. You keep thinking the same thing over and over. And the repetition, by the way, I just want to mention, is there because you've identified with it. This is me, you see? Anyways, that's the engine. And that is why there's that voice in your head. And it's why instead of telling you awesome, loving things about you, like for example, it could tell you, hey, Dave, you're free. You don't need me. Just relax. I'll be quiet. You're awesome. It could be saying that, but instead, what does it say? It says, oh, man, everything's gonna crash. Oh, have you done that thing? Have you didn't reply to that email? Oh, you're so bad at your work. Oh, why, or whatever. I'm just making stuff up. Like, it could be like your mom. Oh, are you sure you're a good mom? Or should you really be letting your kids do that? Or, it could be, it tells you, oh, your husband is this, your wife is this. Like, tells you some crazy shit, man. Most of it's not even true. So you realize that it could actually be encouraging you, stepping aside, letting you have peace, but it doesn't. It does the exact opposite. Okay? Fearful or limiting things about you, your neighbor, and your world. Okay? Because that's its purpose. The purpose of this structure is to maintain itself through repetitive, fearful thoughts. Do you understand? Without that, you wouldn't get hooked to it. And then you'll ask, oh yeah, but who started the whole system? Don't worry about that. We'll get into that another time. I'm just showing you how it is right now. There's very good reasons for all these things. The point is to understand how it works, not where it came from. Okay? So its purpose is to tell you all this crappish and fearful stuff because that's how it has to live. It has to make you think you need it. That it has to scare you and then give you advice on how to avoid the very thing it scared you about. So you think you need it, and then you think that it is you, but you don't need it. If it switched off, you'd still be functioning very well. You you actually don't need it. But anyways, we'll get to that. For now, I'm just telling you that there is a hidden agenda behind that thought stream. As you can now start to see, there's a hidden agenda. It's not there by random chance, and it's not there to help you. It is there by design and for a purpose. Anyways, we'll get to all those details. Now, domestication causes a radical gap between reality and the cultural narratives. In other words, between what you really are and what you've been told you are. And this gap causes a lot of suffering. And that is why the saying goes that the truth will set you free. That saying is accurate. And also the saying that there's another saying that goes that the beginning of all wisdom is to know thyself. Have you ever heard that? Know thyself. Know thyself is the beginning of all wisdom. That is also accurate because of all these things. So, because you see, through domestication, we are taught not to use our minds, not to think for ourselves. Instead, we're taught to reject our feelings, or at least some of them, or most of them, depending on how you grew up. We're taught to reject our inner knowingness, our inner beingness, and we are taught to instead adopt and use the thoughts of others, to rely on the thoughts given to us by the so-called authorities. Now, those authorities could be anything: parents, neighbors, schools, government, whatever, religions, all of them, So we're taught not to trust ourselves, but to trust external authorities. We are crammed with non-essential information, which is, mostly junk, leaving us too exhausted, too conflicted, and too full to think of for ourselves. You ever heard the Asian, the martial arts saying that you have to empty yourself first before you can gain any wisdom? This is why. So domestication turns people into sheeple, into drifters, people who are unable to think accurately and independently as sovereign beings. Now, the sneaky underlying problem with domestication, with socialization, is that it is designed to create polite, non-aggressive, obedient children who mind their parents and fit their societies. It is literally a programming protocol. It uses judgment, guilt and shame, punishment and reward, to achieve its aims. It leaves our attention hooked on all sorts of nonsense and not on what really matters. And in this way, it often operates as a parasite, a predator of our energies and our attention. In other words, your attention is no longer yours. It's stolen. That voice in the head just keeps going around like a running monkey. You can get it back. An awakened being is a sovereign being. A sovereign being thinks accurately, independently, free of the multitude of forces that pull a domesticated person in all sorts of conflicting and minimizing directions. A sovereign being understands the true power of their mind and emotions, and that being takes over that power because it's their power, and that being does not give it to any other person or any other influence. That's the thing. You don't need to give away your power. Your mind, your emotions, you see, your attention, it's yours. The only reason you don't have it is because you gave it away. But nobody can actually take it by force. And you can always take it back. Nobody can prevent you. I'm not saying it's easy. It can be difficult, but it's simple. It's that simple. It's not necessarily easy, but it's that simple. And that is what we're talking about here. Becoming sovereign, becoming awakened beings. And in the next lesson, we will look at the concept of releasing your brakes. The next lesson or the lesson after that, we'll look at that. We'll look at the, I'll give you another video that further goes into this whole idea of being domesticated. Plus, I will give you a Buddhist psychology cheat sheet, that's a PDF. And I highly recommend that you look at that PDF carefully and look at it thoroughly. Even if you're not a Buddhist, it's very high level psychology. Okay, you have to really carefully look at it. Just turn to the page where it's a PDF. Turn to the page where it actually starts talking about the Buddhist psychology. That's what the Buddha came up with, and it's absolutely brilliant. It will start to make you understand how your beingness works. How it's hooked and so on. How you have that self-image and so on. So thank you very much.